Welcome, good morning, afternoon and good evening to everybody on the call. Thanks very much for joining us today. Today in our session we're going to be covering information regarding chatbots and artificial intelligence, and the key thing we'll be looking to understand is how actual consumer emotions are actual needs, and how organizations can use trade-off attributes and methodologies to focus on key drivers. The format for today will be a short presentation. Then we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the session. So please provide in those questions in the box we provided in the chat. As we get kick-started, to get kick-started, we're going to get a brief introduction with myself and my colleague who's going to be speaking today. And then we're going to go one by one into the slides. Myself and Leighton will be doing one or two slides at a time. So to kick off, my name is Simon Dunville. I'm the Chief Product Marketing Officer at OSG. My background is digitally focused. I have 20 plus years in key innovation and product leadership positions. Worked with a number of organizations, Fortune 2000, from Barclays, GfK, White, Vodafone and Zynga. I've also worked with a number of startup incubators as a mentor and business development owner, including Barclays Rise, which is an accelerator program, and Virgin as well. Leighton?
Hi, yes, thanks. I'm Leighton Quinton, and I'm Director of Product Marketing at OSG. I come from a background in marketing for more than 20 years now, and that includes consultancy, financial services, whole host of different sectors really. But in those sectors, been involved in launching products from kind of quite mechanical products and services to kind of highly technological ones. And some experience as well around integration of chatbots and implementation in a previous role.
Thank you, Leighton. So a little bit of information about OSG as we get going. So we have very much strength in technologies, technology organization with academic background and also, strong digital roots. Organizations, we've worked across Fortune 2000 companies, large organizations from insurance, financial services, CPG, retail, energy, companies like HP, Red Bull, Shell, J&J. Global presence in over 25 countries. We've delivered engagements across multiple languages as well. And we've also had a number of publications from a thought leadership perspective, which we continue to do moving forward. So let's continue. Thank you. Okay, so chatbot and the power. Interestingly, chatbots have been around a long time. I think the perception is something new. It's something that's exciting. It's actually been around for a long period of time. And in 2016, a world record for the fastest fulfillment of a claim using artificial intelligence was done, and it took 3 seconds to fulfill end-to-end fulfillment process. So they're nothing new. But they're only as good as the visionaries who understand how to use them and also understand how to implement them. Interesting enough, Lemonade Insurance is a very, very technologically advanced product, and it is something that provides probably one of the most effective and most interesting uses of chatbots to this date still. Okay, so where are we with chatbots? So 35% at the moment of the market expected to grow year on year. By 2020. 80% of businesses expected to use chatbots, whether that'll be in customer engagement or whether that'll be from a retail perspective of understanding consumer behavior from front-end website. Banking, chatbots are very much used at the moment from a lot of the larger organizations, insurance companies, in the most simplest terms to work with a lot of the queries from a customer service perspective. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit from banking is password resets, forgotten usernames, and the very, very soft, generic kind of functionality challenges they have. But these are obviously the biggest benefits and the biggest savers for them when they have like 200,000-300,000 calls a day. So huge amounts of data and information can be saved in terms of management, but also the cost of customer support can be reduced as well. Retail, private shopping assistance, very much an influential part from a chatbot perspective, using social media, aligning kind of with the behavioral analytics, and obviously from consumers what their recommendations are. And of course in healthcare, monitoring patients from a clinical trial perspective. So, you know, how patients are interfacing directly with their chatbot and the recommendations that come from a chatbot based upon potentially some medical condition they have or something they may need to do to change at that point in time, based upon their condition. So the reality of chatbots, they are pretty clunky. They actually disrupt the expectations of users, and more often they're actually the wrong reason for a topic of conversation. They don't make sense to use generally. The trust and confidence is not there when you're actually using them. You know, yes, they may look glossy, yes, they may seem funny, but actually the end and output is at this point in time does not get you where you need to get to. There's more of an incentive to actually quit than there is to stay. So obviously from a conversion perspective, you know, that funnel, you know, that there's a huge impact on the business. And in most cases, you know, if you'd have wanted to pick up the phone, you would have done so. So, you know, the challenge with chatbots are you generally get redirected to a call center or someone on the end of the phone who is willing to help your needs, which in effect takes you probably 3, 4, 5 times as long as it would do to pick up the phone call as well in the first place. Next slide. So, why they're not so smart? In most cases, they don't yield results. So, you know, you look at retailers, you look at in terms of consumer habits, you look at shopping experiences, you look at the goals consumers are looking for. You know, there clearly is no alignment with what consumers are looking for. Historic data is what a lot of chatbots are used for. It's not live, it's not real time. They're not insufficient in terms of how they're trained. They don't provide that good domain knowledge. They don't understand, you know, user expectations. You know, in effect, they don't understand the real nitty gritty of how a user feels. That point in time where they are frustrated. And of course, on the side, in terms of technicalities, from like banking, insurance, where you've got faced with a number of difficult acronyms. How do you understand the acronyms when it comes to conversation? And of course, you know, contrary to the perception of what people think is a chatbot, they actually do need nurturing like a baby. You know, they require continuous change and monitoring, particularly with larger organizations that they have a very, very fast approach to change, you know, in terms of business goals, whether they're in an agile development or not, which means you have to allow the chatbot to keep up with you. So the chatbot needs to be part of your agile process when it comes to development, which means your goals change, the classification of data needs to be reviewed, and also it means that you have to have those resources to support a chatbot. It's not all just about automation.
Okay. So the challenges, some specific challenges really with chatbots, is I think fundamentally a desire for people to use chatbots to show a forward-thinking approach. And this is sometimes implemented without a full understanding of you know, the full implications of how that's going to be integrated. So how we integrate it with discounts and loyalty benefits for retailers, how they integrate it with that information, with product usage data from customers, how it can assist with shipping and logistics and bi-directional marketing. So it's really an awful lot, and this is where it fundamentally comes down to, I think, to kind of understanding what's going to really resonate with customers and making sure that the chatbot is programmed to understand those things, so it's not a frustrating approach for the customer. Okay, Simon, do you want to?
Thank you. Yeah, so typically customer chatbot engagement flow is very complicated. a simple set of questions can lead to a huge amount of information. Most of that information is not classified in a way that will be able to A, articulate correctly to a consumer, and B, actually capture the right outputs that you need to be able to ensure that in the back end and from a measurement KPIs perspective, you know really what a user wants, what they need, and what their aspirations are moving forward. So, this example kind of shows the challenges with a simple flow, but it also shows that you have to be more focused on the goal of the consumer and really understand, from a demographics perspective, from an emotional perspective, from an empathy perspective, from all those kind of usability, user experience focused things, what a user is there to do and what he expects when he comes out the other end. Very Leighton.
Okay, so sorry, Simon, are you going to?
I'll cover that. Sorry, so thanks, Leighton. So in terms of the road to success or failure, as we say, the challenge with chatbots is actually the point at which you integrate it. So the biggest challenge to any business is the integration and the impact in revenue. So the return on investment, of course, of having the chatbot integrated, but how long will it take for a chatbot to be actually influential in your business? How long will it take it to be trained, for the data classification to be up to speed, the user adoption, and obviously, from an integration perspective, does it make sense as part of any development plan? So, the impact of that point is obviously the customer retention, loyalty, and churn, and the uncertainty of whether it will work or not. Typically, training of a traditional chatbot, even in a simple flow, could take between 12 to 18 months, but something that's very sophisticated, again, insurance, financial services, where you may have a lot of acronyms, it could be I use the thing undetermined time period, but it could be very much a long-winded approach to doing it. So this example was actually a previous client who we started to work from an analytical perspective, and they had already a chatbot implemented on one of their products, and they were measuring system usability score and also NPS as their key metrics to as part of their business drivers. We followed their measurements when they actually went back and looked at how their implementation worked. And the dip was incredible for a long period of time. So they lost the focus on, in terms of negative impact on, the brand equity, consumer loyalty, recommendations, in terms of the cost of the return investment at the time when the chatbot was being used, because it was continually being used, but the revenue was decreasing. And of course, brand equity as well was impacted because of negativity of something that was deemed to be not that effective because it didn't understand the right questions. So it is about the training. It takes time. It's about understanding what the consumer needs. It's about targeting their requirements and actually fulfilling that from a conversational perspective. And then when you actually get to that positive impact, you'll see where, in their case, where the numbers are uplifted from both the system usability score and NPS. But the key thing is at what point you get to that. And this is a lot of the challenges that people are faced at the moment with. They're very much in this uncertain period of should they pull a chatbot because it's not performing, or should they wait? When they wait, it works, but the challenge is the significant loss in a number of those areas if you do not tackle a chatbot and work with a chatbot in the right way during that period.
I think this is where the emotional quotient comes in, really, in the title, and we're talking about chatbots and how specifically we have the challenge of really understanding those customer interactions, which can be everything, of course, from voice to how things are said to facial expressions and that underlying tonality, really. So how does the chatbot understand that? And really, the answer, there are tools, of course, with AI to understand those emotions, such as frustration, anger, and joy, and map them in real time, so that the chatbot can implement that and make decisions that correspond in a way that won't frustrate the customer and will hopefully lead to a positive result. So, you know, that technology's there and it can be done, and it can be integrated into chatbots. Specifically about the pain period relating to that and how we understand what really matters to the customer, what issues we should focus the chatbot on solving, and this is very much where OSG's technology comes in and approach. OSG uses a trade-off approach, which can measure, in fact, up to about 50 attributes. And this algorithm can run in real time as well if it needs to. So it's something that can be done as the chatbot's working, could be developed to do that. So fundamentally, the standard approach of comparing attributes and the trade-off approach and the AceMap approach, particularly a very superior form of trade-off analysis, creates this actionable insight. So in the example here, which relates to chocolate and healthy ingredients versus bitterness, we've actually got some actionable insight in terms of how we blend the chocolate to what consumers, what the optimum kind of blend would be to maximize market share moving forwards. So quite easy to see in a kind of simplified way like this how that trade-off approach can work. So coming back to applying that approach to the example Simon provided and how that might look if we can do that trade-off work during the time that we're working without the chatbot. And so we have a sprint of work where we're identifying all the things that really matter and integrating that into the design thinking for the chatbot. Then this pain period that Simon outlined, the huge benefit here is we can shorten that period significantly and have impact. So OSG's approach in terms of understanding what really matters is integrates not just the trade-off methodology that I mentioned, but also looks back at all our unstructured data, the customer's voice and video data, really every type of data. So really uncovering in the cognitive analytics phase of the work, the who and the what, which, you know, a number of providers will do that. What OSG provides and understands is the how and the why as well. So moving forwards, we've got that actionable insight for the chatbot. We know what things to focus on and what outcomes the customer would wish to see moving forwards. And we can develop those predictive tools and models on behalf of the customer. Specific example of working with that methodology relates to this customer who's automotive distributor in USA, and the approach looks at a number of different data sources. As I mentioned, all the data sources earlier, and is a live approach. So it's looking at things like mystery shop data, surveys, customer transactions, industry park data, customer training data, and putting all that together to define a program and create some live dashboards for the customer, which are totally customized, feeding all this data in through the cognitive analytics platform to output at a number of different levels in the organization. So obviously at the corporate level, there's lots of franchisees in the organization, so the franchisee might own multiple sites, so outputting at franchisee level and also individual site level. So these really condensing all this data into actionable insight at these different levels in the organization and creating a greater customer centricity for them in the organization. So what does that all mean? What does it give us? What does it look like? It fundamentally, in a test group, we're working with OSG solution. Without the OSG solution, you can see huge significant difference for the benefit of becoming more customer centric and focusing on those things that really matter to customers. So the impact revenue of all that and using that data in the right way, 100 million to the client. Okay, Simon.
Thank you, Leighton. So to wrap up on what we talked about today, so it is about the how and the why. It is about implementation earlier on during, if you're a development organization as part of that planning, it's ensuring that, you understand what will happen as part of a development life cycle, and also understand what you need to deliver and continually deliver as part of a chatbot's life. So, we talked earlier about, the challenges with a chatbot and what needs to be done in terms of its maintenance. A chatbot, in effect, is a real human being to a degree. It requires that nurturing, it requires that comfort, but it also requires that training. A chatbot also, needs to communicate to your consumers in the right way. So, like dialects, it has to be focused on emotion. It has to understand about different demographics. It also has to understand culturally, what is happening. Only to be able to do that, you have to have full alignment from a product perspective. You have to have that integration layer that allows you to understand, your back-end requirements, but also integrates into a methodology such as we've talked about today that allows that clear understanding of what a user needs to do and what he wants to do, and most importantly, what he is expecting out of a conversation with the chatbot. Improving the interface with the consumers is a long process, depending on the size of the project, depending on the size of the requirements set by the organization. But it can be less painful if it is clear what the goals need to be from the start of the project. So, from our agile methodology, we work in an iterative manner. We solve those solutions for our clients using that methodology. And by doing so, it mitigates those difficulties and provides, a longer term value for clients. And also, it's quicker for them to see the effectiveness of how these chatbots work within their own environments as well. So it takes time to train a chatbot. There can be hundreds of thousands of classified bits of the data that needs to be put in place. But if you do make sense of it, you're going to maximize it, the outputs from a business perspective. Okay, so how do we work with our friend Mr. Chatbot? So, it's our trade-off methodology. We integrate that's part of your SDLC, your software development lifecycle. We link it to a big data platform or someone else's big data platform. We get a 360-degree understanding of consumer needs, desires, and motivations. And then you have a smarter bot that works with you rather than against you, and provides that, more clearer and better ROI for your business moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon and Leighton. That was a wonderful presentation. We have a couple of questions. In your opinion, what percentage of global 2,000 companies are using AI tools such as chatbots at present?
Okay, so it's roughly about 20%. Taking into consideration, the main jurisdictions, about 20%. Countries that are less connected, it is a little bit lower due to some of the challenges you have with the interventions you need to connect with through the bot, but it's about 20%.
Thank you, Simon. And a related question would be, you talked a lot about chatbots need a lot of improvements, but can you specifically talk about what kinds of improvements, say in the insurance and medical device vectors, so that they can deploy better and efficient chatbots?
Go ahead, Simon, sorry.
So you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure. So specifically, I think in financial services and insurance, it's about making sure of course, those key things that the chatbots are tasked to do, that they can do perhaps the simpler things first and then scale that up. So very much when I was involved in financial services, we were focusing, as Simon said, on things like password resets, communication issues, things that, and then trying to build it into, greater customer assistance. And we also started off kind of using chatbots internally in the organization first as a test bed as well, trying to solve some of the internal problems before kind of unleashing them into kind of the retail side. So I think it's about doing it in a kind of in a compartmentalized way, if you like, and launching it that way.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up on that in terms of the methodology we have. In terms of how we look at key drivers and how we have that trade-off, we use that part of the development lifecycle program as well. So when we're looking at the right business drivers to focus on, we also do those trade-off exercises earlier in the process which actually formulate part of the scope we then go to a client with. So that kind of process can be used in a number of ways, and it can also be used at the end of a project when you're looking to identify the level of detail from an analytical perspective. So when you have tens of thousands of data points that we need to make sense of, and some of those may be from chats that come from chatbots, then you can also run that exercise again, which allows you to make that funnel smaller. It allows you to understand what those key challenges are, and it also allows you to understand what you need to do to move forward in terms of whether it's to validate something or to have something that you need to action. So the trade-off can work in a number of places. At the beginning, during the middle in this case, which is before the integration, and also after, to measure and drive actionable insights.
Thank you, Simon and Leighton. Thanks to our audience for taking the time to attend this presentation. We'll have a copy of the presentation on our OSG Analytics website in about 24 hours. If you want to contact Simon or Leighton, their information is up on the screen. With that, we thank you once again and wish you all a very good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.